I wanted to make this, a little bit of a history of my experiences in growing up in the church, and what has kind of created my viewpoint, or has led to my viewpoint changing. So, as a child, my family were Baptists. So, my grandfather was a Baptist pastor. My family never seemed to fit into that mold. We went to church quite often, but we were never really a part of that church, or either of my grandparents. Both sets of grandparents were Baptists. We went to my grandma and grandpa's church on my mom's side more, but we were never really a big part of the church. And I remember from a very early age, my dad always questioning things. My dad always having a concern. He would be reading the Bible and he would say, there's such a disconnect here between what I'm reading and what I'm seeing and experiencing going to church. And so this led to us visiting many different kinds of churches over the years. But it wasn't really until my family left Kansas City, where we're from, and we moved to South Dakota, Custer, South Dakota. And we went to a few churches there. And for some reason, my dad had visited one church on his own. I don't remember why he went there, and we didn't go with him. But he came back and he was like, yeah, this is something special. We've got to go here next week. And we went there, and he was right. It was a different experience. And people use this word too much for things like this, but it's the only thing I can think of. There was a real organic aspect to this. So, for example, many churches, most churches probably talk about not being Sunday Christians, that church doesn't end on Sunday, that you have to live it out throughout the week, and all of these things. And they make programs for small groups. They make programs for different kinds of gatherings, and they make programs for different ways to try to push the people together. And what this didn't have is any of that. It was a very natural thing. My family is not a very sociable family. We're not a kind of family that goes over to people's houses and has people come over to our house and all kinds of things like that. But this, we were a part of it. And there were no programs. People just got together. People went over to each other's houses. People shared meals. People shared different events. And people went places and did things together. And it wasn't any kind of a planned, programmed atmosphere. And that was the first thing that hit me in my search over the years. Was it perfect? No. But it gave me a little bit of a glimpse of part of the problem that needs to be overcome. Over-programming. We over-program because it's not natural, it's not human nature to assemble together like that. So we program it. We try to force it instead of the Holy Spirit making it happen. So that was the first thing. after that, we moved to Oregon. And pretty soon after moving there, we got invited to a church. We went to that church. We enjoyed it. It was nothing like groundbreaking or amazing, but it was kind of comfortable, kind of modern, but not like crazy dancing, rolling on the floors type of thing. It was comfortable. Nothing against any of that. I'm just saying. And then the pastor decided he wanted to leave and start a church elsewhere. And he tried to get us to go with him. But we had just moved and moved and moved, and we were pretty much done moving at that point. So we had to decline. So the church went into a phase of finding a pastor. So in the interim, the youth pastor took over those responsibilities. We were not really thrilled with him. It's not that he was a bad guy or had horrible messages or anything, but he had the mindset of talking to teenagers, and that doesn't really go over well for adults. At the time, I was a teenager, but I never talked like that. I never felt like that. So, it kind of felt goofy to me. So we weren't thrilled with that, but we kind of just waited it out to see what was going to happen. During that period, the church understandably started going through some financial problems, as many churches do when they lose a pastor. So to try to correct this, this youth pastor hired this accountant to not just to come in and try to help the church, but to come in and try to scare the church. So this accountant would come up weekly to the stage behind the pulpit and literally bark at the people, shouting about how they need to do more, they need to give more, this is ridiculous, this isn't good. It was really off-putting. And then finally they thought the best solution to this was to release a detailed accounting of the church's debts, what they owe, who they owe them to, who gets paid what, a list of every single person or company or anything that they have to pay money to. Now, one of the things, before I continue with that, one of the things that we were so impressed by this church was that if you missed a service for any reason, they'd always call, "Are you okay? We just want to make sure you're okay. We didn't see you in service today." If you had to go to the hospital, they were there. I mean, sometimes they would be at the hospital before you got there. If you told them, "I have to go to the hospital on Monday, for this procedure," by the time you get there, somebody from the church is there. And we were very, very impressed with that. But then when they released this document showing where all the church funds go, it kind of became evident why. Seems like every single person who did anything for that church got paid. I don't want to, go too deeply into this argument. Should some people get paid? Yeah, if that's their full-time ministry, should everyone who does anything to help the church get paid? Absolutely not. People should care enough to call. People should care enough to visit. It's not about a paycheck. It's not a career. It's a ministry. So when we saw that, that was kind of like the beginning of the end for me. I can't speak for the rest of my family. I know they were disgusted. But for me personally, that was it. I said, I'm done. I'm done with church. I never for one moment doubted God or Christ. But I said, that's garbage. That's nothing. And so I didn't go back to church. My parents tried a few different churches in that community. Went to one for quite a while, but I didn't go back. I didn't go back to church. Fast forward, we moved back to Kansas, near Kansas City. I decide that I want to give it another try. Our family goes to a church there, and we like it. I mean, it's a little bit, how should I say it, simple, or a little bit self-help oriented, which I didn't care for, but it was nice. I didn't last long there. I mean, I probably went there for about a year, but again, I was asking the same questions that my dad was asking. I was reading the Bible, and I was saying, what is this disconnect? There's a huge disconnect here. Something just isn't right. And then again, I had stopped for quite a long time, probably 4 years. Then I moved here to the Philippines, and I got married. And church is very important to my wife. So I thought, okay, here, I'm in another part of the world, and a completely different system. I'll give it a go, and maybe they've got it right. No. Sorry to say, it was not good. My wife had just gone through a terrible typhoon, which flooded her apartment, and she lost all of her clothes. So we were in the process of kind of slowly rebuilding her wardrobe. She had very few things to wear. So one week they wanted us to do a song. I play the guitar and she sings. So we said, okay, yeah, we'll do a song. We did the song, and then they talked my wife into coming back to do like background vocals several weeks later for the worship service. She puts on her dress, she gets dressed up, we get dressed up, we go to church, and when we get there, the worship leader comes up to her and looks her up and down and turns up her nose like and says, "You're going to have to go home and change. You can't wear that." And we were kind of like in shock. What? Why? Because the dress shows 2 inches of your knee. After just going through a flood, losing everything she owns, including all of her clothes, having a very limited wardrobe, she was told to leave church and not to come back unless she changed into something else, because it showed 2 inches. Okay, so that was the end. I said, no, not going to happen. We visited our friend's church a few times, but that was it. I was done. And so I still struggled. I was struggling, What is this disconnect? I was trying to take the church and the Bible and find where they connected, until I started getting interested in translating, because there were some words that the sounds were translated, what they call transliterated, instead of translated, and then translated instead of transliterated, and kind of some messy stuff there. And so it kind of piqued my interest, and I started with a select few words working with these things, and it built and it built and it built until I was sitting there and I was translating the entire thing, and translating entire passages, entire chapters. And once I did that, everything just became clear. I was going, okay, the word church, for one thing, what we consider church, does not exist in the Bible. There's no place in the Bible that says that on Saturday or on Sunday that you go to a building, you sit in the chairs, you sing some songs, you pass the collection plate, you listen to a message, you sing some more songs, and you go home. There's absolutely zero of precedent for that in the Bible. It doesn't exist. And I started thinking, how can Christianity be based on something that doesn't exist in the Bible? And so that's what started this path that I've been on. Learning the meanings of words. Church meaning the people who are called to God. In other words, believers. So try reading any passage in the Bible that refers to church and replace it with the believers. To the church at Ephesus, to the believers at Ephesus. The church at Rome, to the believers at Rome. Anywhere you see the word church, you can replace it with believers and have a far more accurate description. Now, some people, when they hear me talking about this, they start putting up walls. Oh, how can you say this? It says we're supposed to assemble together. We're supposed to assemble together. We're supposed to assemble together. That's church. Church is assembling together. I'm sorry, but church isn't assembling together. The church is the people, and yes, the people are supposed to assemble together. So I started kind of getting this pushback. So we started a ministry to try to educate people on what these words are, what they mean, and what it could mean for your life. For example, when I say church doesn't exist in the Bible, people often say, assembling, assembling, hello, assembling. So what our goal is to change the mindset from assembling, meaning going to a building on a special day, dressing up in special clothes, acting nice, singing songs, and going home. Assembling goes away. That's not assembling. Assembling is where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. There will I be in the midst of them. So if you're there with your friends having dinner, if you're there with your family, if you are having a conversation with your neighbors, if you have a debate with your co-workers, or at your school, these are the assembling of the believers. It does not have to be a formal meeting at a place, at a time. It's where you are, when you are. That is the assembling of the believers. That is what we should not avoid. That is what we should embrace. And that goes back to that church in Custer, South Dakota. What I learned there, the natural, organic way of coming together. It doesn't need a program. It doesn't need some kind of mindset of putting a day and a time and saying, everyone come to this thing, or the men go to this thing, and the women go to this thing, and this person hosts the small groups this week, and then this person hosts the small groups next week. Those are all planned programmed by people instead of letting natural, organic relationships grow through the Holy Spirit. So that is our ministry. That is our goal, is to try to educate people on the meanings of words, trying to restore the scriptures, the meanings of the scriptures in their proper place, so that people start to see every minute of every day is the assembling of the believers, where 2 or 3 gather together in my name. That's the only description Jesus gives of the assembling of the believers. So church does not mean assemble. Church means the people who believe in Jesus. The called out ones, literally. The people who have been called out of the world to follow God, to follow Christ. The believers. So, that's the history of it. That's how I general step by step through some different experiences that helped me broaden my thinking about this, and helped me have some different understandings. This is not an easy topic, because people like their church, people like their organizations, they like their traditions. So it's not an easy topic, it's not an easy road to take, but God promised that the right road to take is rarely, if ever, going to be the easy road to take. So that is our motive, that is our history of why and how we ended up here, where we are in our ministry now. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you get something fruitful from this testimony of sorts. And I will try to keep messages, keep videos and audios coming as often as I can. Thanks, and God bless.